purpose-driven companies outperform their competitors significantly, right? People want to buy from, work for, invest in companies that align with their values.
Welcome to a special episode of All Up in Your Business with me, Kareen. It's so great to connect with you today. I have a special guest that I brought on to talk about what it means to pivot with purpose. There's something about when we go through different levels of growth or finding the next thing we want to go after, we can kind of lose ourselves in the process because there's a bit of an identity shift that has to occur. Like, you have all this learning now, but you want something different, or you want to feel more connected to what it is that you are going after. And Chase Friedman is someone that I have had an awesome time connecting with, but also he's in it right now in his transition. So through this conversation, you're going to get some tips on how to manage through your pivot, but most of all, hear the fact that both of us have had journeys that have not been a straight line. And I'm hoping it encourages you to continue to discover who you're meant to be, how you're meant to show up in the world, drive your life with purpose, but most of all, build your business with intention and grace on having the impact you want in the world. So let's jump in. It's time to get all up in your business. Chase is with me. Chase is the founder of Vanquish Media, and he's going to go through with us what it means to pivot with purpose. We're going to have a discussion on that today, which I'm super excited about, that I know you will benefit from. But most of all, you just love to be in the moment of us understanding what it takes to rise up in a business, and then realize, you know what, there's something else I might want to do. And I believe we're not just one thing. We are many things. We have many different identities that we show up in, depending on which area of life we want to focus on. And now we're in the middle of something with Chase that he's going to help us understand. But most of all, see how I can serve as he goes through this pivot and help support him through it. So welcome, Chase, to the show.
Thank you, Kareen. Amen to everything you just prefaced. So I think we're done here.
I know. We're just getting started. That's what I love about talking with you, Chase, because you are someone who does step into action when you see something that needs to shift, right? And not everybody's comfortable in that. So let's talk a little bit first about uncertainty. Like, when you feel uncertain, what happens?
Well, after the initial panic and spiraling and what am I doing here? Inevitably, I trust my gut and I usually leap. And it's usually into the unknown. And it's usually something that scares me a little bit. But I know with conviction is on my path. I think there's a little bit of trusting yourself, trusting the questions and the challenges you've posed for yourself in terms of defining what your purpose is. And you're right, it's a constantly evolving thing. This is not a set it and forget it. This is an iterative process. But I do think it is that is that constant guide, that constant voice that helps you make those decisions, whether it's micro day to day or macro life decisions. For example, as you already know, I've just made a big leap and pivot, really affecting both my life and my business. I've just moved myself and my family to Spain, which has been a dream of ours for years.
Cool. Yeah.
And after coming up with every reason why I couldn't or shouldn't, or it's not the right time, the calling was too consistent and too deep, and it aligned with the type of life and business that I wanted to run. And so I'm really now in the throes of making that adjustment. And so far, so great.
I'm so glad to hear it. I mean, as you know, for me too, I went through my move as well. And anytime you move, whether it's across state lines or across countries, there's always this initial, what's going to happen? Like, how's that going to come together? And I have my ways of looking at change and trying to find certainty in myself through the uncertainty of what might happen on the other side. But I also think there's a lot of grace that you have to have in the transition as it's happening. So I know you've been only a few weeks now into your move. By the time this airs, it might be like a few months into your move. How are you applying grace to yourself and kind of the dynamic of what it means to shift? What have been the highlights in this specific pivot? And what are the things you're like, well, we need to kind of tweak this, work on this a little more?
I mean, I think you hit it spot on in terms of patience and grace that I give to myself to navigate this journey, to go through the changes, the uncertainty, the challenges that come with it. Another big sort of mantra in this season of my life and business. It's a word that I used to never use because I had a very different interpretation of it, and that is surrender.
Mm,
Um, I used to look at surrender as failure or giving up, and now I look at it as a strength and taking courage and vulnerability. And so in this season of surrender, trusting, the work that you've put in and the calling to a higher purpose. Um, and along that road, you have to be willing to give yourself grace because it is not going to appear clear the first or the second or the third time. Um, that is something that I meditate on every single day is patience and grace. For my business, my kids, myself.
yeah, yeah.
It's one of the things that I don't think we talk about enough in entrepreneurship. And we certainly do not give ourselves enough grace on a day to day, given all that we have to handle and juggle and navigate.
I think it's so true. I think it takes what you mentioned briefly is like a ritual of sorts to be conscious of it, right? Again, it's like to break through uncertainty, there requires action. And so in order to be intentional about bringing grace into your life or figuring out the surrender energy in the moment, because there are moments where we do have to kind of like push and hustle and make things happen,
Yeah.
like packing up the house, booking the flights, like getting through all that crazy frenetic, I don't know what's going to happen next energy. And then you land there and you're like, all right, let's get settled. Let's unpack. Let's see what's missing. Well, this didn't come over on the freight. This thing either got broken by the mover. And you're like, do you get triggered? Or do you find the moment of, all right, we got majority at this time. What can we do with majority of what we're working with,
Yeah. I mean, knowing that this decision was bigger than myself, right? This was a higher calling, for the life I wanted to lead. Actually, both,
and
pun
leave?
intended.
Yeah.
There's definitely, I felt a connection here. And there is a duality to surrender, though, I believe. By surrendering, that doesn't mean letting go of everything. I think you can simultaneously surrender and lean in, right? But you're absolutely right. There's plenty of things that are already sort of up in the air. Are we going to get our visa in time? Are we going to be able to stay here?
Yeah.
Getting my kids into school.
Yeah.
Those are just kind of day-to-day things. But knowing this was a decision born out of time and consideration and contemplation and intention. This was not a getting away from something. This was going towards something. And I think that keeps me steady because this wasn't just sort of an impulsive decision. And
Yeah.
so it makes it a little bit easier to navigate some of those micro challenges and just
Yeah.
trusting the process.
So let's talk about the process a little bit, because I think that's what, people watching and listening would benefit from is what was the point at which you decided, what, this is now the time that you're going to execute a plan to make this purposeful, purpose-driven vision come to life? How long was that from discovery of this is the way we're going, and now you're actually living it?
I mean, I'm very much a measure twice, cut once type of person. But it doesn't mean that it prevents me from making the leap when it's time. I've had dreams of living abroad for many, many years. But I took it in measured doses. For the last 2 summers, my family and we've taken a trip out to Spain. We've spent a month here and scouted it out. Enough time to kind of get a vibe of what it would be like to live here beyond just kind of a trip or a vacation. And that allowed me to really test and acclimate how am I going to navigate managing my business and my clients on a day-to-day basis. That first summer, I mean, I think before I started taking calls and getting into a rhythm, I had like an anxiety-induced like heart attack. It was crazy. I was like, how am I going to do it? What's it going to be like? Is everyone going to leave? And it was easy and it was fluid and it was actually a relief because I had all day, all morning and day to be with my family, be with my kids, and then compartmentalize my work in a certain amount of time. This is like Parkinson's law. You give yourself a day, a 9 to 5 to do a certain amount of tasks. You'll take the day. We fill up our days because that's just what we do.
Yeah.
But if you give yourself a more compressed amount of time, we can achieve the same amount. And so that was liberating and a total mind shift for me But doing that the last couple of summers for a month really ramped me up mentally, emotionally, for this bigger commitment.
And also validated, right? Like they validated that that's something that as a family could work,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Because, sometimes in our entrepreneurial minds, we can be very one directional in I'm going to make this happen for me, and I'm going to make this happen for my business. And I'm going to, and that holistic approach of this has been a vision. I want to see if my business can work. It's really, I always say, your business is meant to fuel your life, not the other way around. And so I love your approach of testing it, right? Like you had a concept, you went out, you went and you did extended validation to then say, this could work. This feels right. This was really scary, even just to do it momentarily. But now I feel like I've flexed my muscle and I can figure it out. And then it turned into the planning for how to make it full time, how to understand what it would mean to fully remove yourself from where you were previously in the States to now what it would look like full time, and have a partner in life that actually is game to be
Ride or die.
alongside you, right? Like she's
Yeah.
amazing, and I'm so honored that I met her too. And just like that, because you can't do it alone, that
No,
part
especially
too.
with two young kids that we're taking here, and
Yeah.
making sure that they feel on board. Not that that's their decision, but
But
no,
it
we
was
want them
still
to be, we
comfortable.
want them to
Yeah.
acclimate and comfortable. And I think,
Mhm.
I mean, I see it. Each successive time we've done this, they've gotten a little bit more comfortable and at ease and at peace being here. And I'm so proud of them. I mean, they have really jumped in and thrived, leaving their friends, leaving their family. It's like, act like you've been there. Like they're, walking it right now. And so this was also, like I said, bigger than me. It was an experience I wanted to give to them, raise them in a different environment than, certainly than I was raised, and they were growing up back in Los Angeles. But definitely roadmap. It wasn't a blind just leap of faith out of nowhere.
That's amazing. I think I'm curious too, because I'm sure people listening and around the how it all went down. Do you attribute some of that flexibility to the fact that you've been entrepreneurial and taken risks in the past and kind of seen what it's like to throw spaghetti at the wall and be like, oh, that sticks. No, that doesn't, because I know you've been in business a while.
Yeah.
So any acumen that you got out of being an entrepreneur that also made this a little bit more adaptable for you?
Well, I mean, like you said, I think you've got to build a business for the life you want to live, right? It's got to be life-giving. And it wasn't always like that. I was on a road for many, many years building the business that I thought I was supposed to build. That was the common or prescribed definition of success.
Yeah.
And it didn't feel like me. And I hit rock bottom, and I burnt out, and I kind of burnt it to the ground. And I had to really reflect on why. What was my purpose? Why this line of work? Who I wanted to serve? How I wanted to serve them? And until I got that right, I wasn't ready to have the conversation around intentionally rebuilding my business for the life and purpose that I wanted to lead. So I think you've got to have that clarity of purpose first and foremost. Ask yourself what it is you're seeking and why, and then go build around it. But yeah, I mean, as an entrepreneur, I feel incredibly blessed. Because sharing this news of our move with friends and family, most of which who are not entrepreneurs, either they don't get it, they think we're crazy, or they can't even conceive of the possibility of what that would be like for them, or even ask themselves the question, well, if not this, then what? So I think we are blessed as entrepreneurs that we have that flexibility, but it is a big responsibility. There's no real turning off, so you have to still find the balance each day.
It is. I say it all the time. I don't know how to turn it off now because I've been doing it for so long. I approach everything so uniquely, and that if it's something that you want and you desire for yourself, I know there's a path that you could take to get there. It's just a matter of the choice of taking action towards that path. And I love that you focus on in your practice and as you're coaching individuals and building them up and diving into business, whether it's, for what you do with your media company or for what you do individually through your talks and your sessions, it's purpose driven.
Well, yeah, I mean, like you started to interrupt, like you said,
Yeah.
You can't turn it off, and you're right. But so if you can't turn it off as an entrepreneur, wouldn't you want that on switch to be something that you love and is fulfilling and energizing and keeping you in flow? Like, because when it's that, it's incredible, right? Versus being always on doing something that feels like a job and a chore and a self-made prison. So this is the constant as entrepreneurs, but so many of us are still ignoring um, how to make it life-giving versus kind of soul-sucking in some cases.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I've had many a conversations with that type of transformative awareness. You know, I don't know if you're similar to me, but like I get all the tears when I'm one on one with people. Because they feel this relief of like I can actually express the fact that I am not satisfied, happy, nor aligned with what I'm doing all the time. And I'm so overwhelmed and I feel like I have to and I should do this and I should do that. And I'm like, yeah, stop shooting all over yourself. Like you are choosing this. Entrepreneurship is a
Right,
choice.
right,
So choose wisely. So
right.
choose your role, know what your innate skill set is, go out, outsource for the rest, hire for the rest, decide that like the path you're on can be aligned with who you are and can be supported. I think that's where we also have this disconnect in it's mainly in the States, which I know you're already feeling because we checked in, a couple of days ago where it was about the community that you've been able to raise even just as quick as you moved to Spain, that there's this like innate, energetic, how can I help? How can I support?
Pay
Welcome.
it forward mindset.
Welcome. Yeah,
Totally.
like this value
Yes.
driven, value
Yes.
exchange all the time. My second book was all about, that value exchange. Because if you lead with your values and you understand the values of others and you can figure out that exchange, you create a connection that makes you want to do it over and over again. But for some reason, we've become too individualistic on the entrepreneurial journey. It's why you and I exist and people come to us, right, for support. But I would love to figure out how we kind of remove the veil of the individualism that we have embedded in us, that's what entrepreneurship is. No business runs without other people in it. Like your clients, if you're individualistic, your clients are not going to feel connected to you, right? If you're too individualistic, your team is not going to connect with you. Like it'll fail in its own rhythm because we're not being open enough to accept the help. And so when you decide and figure out your purpose, because that's like step one of working with you, then what is the method you have used to make sure that purpose is also connected to others, like that the connection layer starts to get built up in an authentic way as well.
No, that's a fabulous question. I mean, a lot of times we see this purpose paradox. We see this sort of self-professed claim of a purpose and a mission, and it does not make its way throughout the organization and certainly in your day-to-day practice. So many organizations are sort of just box checking right now or purpose washing, greenwashing. That is the crux of it. And there's sort of a framework that I've developed and worked with my clients that I call purpose positioning, because I do believe and the data and the metrics prove it, right? Purpose-driven companies outperform their competitors
Yeah.
significantly, right? People
Yeah.
want to buy from, work for, invest in companies that align with their values, right?
Yes.
And so in today's oversaturated, crowded marketplace, so many are commoditizing in terms of competition. They're just kind of following the same patterns, the same tactics, the same strategies, the same copy, and it's lookalike. So leaning into that purpose is actually your greatest strategic differentiator in a crowded marketplace. So it's not just like I like to say, it's not fluff, it's fuel. It is actually driving real ROI and real business growth because you are attracting and manifesting your ideal clientele, right? Versus going and hunting and hoping and praying you find a needle in the haystack. You're attracting magnetically with people that share those values, right? That align with that deeper purpose. So why not?
Yeah, and that fuel puts more in your tank to want to go harder, go faster, do more, like
Exactly.
expand your reach, all the pieces.
Yeah.
So, I think it is the missing link in a lot of ways when people sit in overwhelm or they sit in this dissatisfaction or they're only looking at their numbers and not really checking in on how does it all feel. Like if we could bring more emotional connection to our decision process without feeling like we have to mask it because we know it all in order to lead something, right? It's honestly why I feel like my purpose is to be that conduit for people to just be real. Like, let's face it. look at what you're feeling challenged by and let's move through it in a way that's aligned with who you are. Not about, always the outcome. It's about what's best for you.
The journey and the process, and credit to you in terms of serving people in that way, because I think, not to be fatalistic about it, but how often do we see that story end without that sort of correction and either burnout or flame out or failure of the business and company? Maybe not immediately, but inevitably that is a path that is not sustainable.
Well, and if it's not in the business, it happens in their relationships, it happens in their health. There's other signs. The number one sign for me was every single time I knew a wall was about to be hit for me was because my health started to
Oh yeah,
react, because I'm highly functional in my dysfunction, like highly
same,
functional. I was
same.
trained that way. Like, you show up anyway, you get it done. It was just very much the mantra.
Yeah.
And woo, the health stuff and the health management side, that's the number one indicator.
I think this is more beyond just sort of a trend of sort of this type of intervention and avoiding burnout. This is a movement. Like, this is a paradigm shift that I think we haven't seen before in business. Um, that is incumbent upon us and others to shift the way we operate and to kind of take a moment. And I know people don't think that they can take their foot off the gas for a moment because everyone will pass them by, but take that moment, take that pause before you hit that burnout to evaluate and kind of course correct and put yourself on the right path.
It's so true. I also think that people, watching and listening are really trying to understand how to get started, like to face their potential pivot, or to be honest with themselves to say, this is just not right. Like, do you have tools in place? Because I know I have some, but I'm curious what your tools are just for the identifier piece, like that great, and using that grace and that care for self to say, you know what, something's got to shift here.
Yeah, look, it's very much the willingness. It goes both ways. I can bring to the table frameworks and processes and what's worked for me, but inevitably people have to be willing to be vulnerable and open up and sacrifice certain parts of themselves or their business to reveal that. And so, like I mentioned, the purpose positioning sort of tool I work with identify all aspects of that personality in terms of not just your internal identity, but externally who you're trying to attract. And the very, very first phase of kind of the curriculum that I work with, whether it's a first-time entrepreneur or a seasoned veteran, institution and organization, is discovery. Is that immersion of discovery in who you are, who you serve, why and how you show up in the world. And that is the bedrock. That is the foundation of the home. And many people like to skip and go ahead. Well, no, just give me the more leads, more, more impressions, more views, more traffic. They think of the end result as the antidote, and it's not. And more often than not, those tactics won't work either unless they have their discovery and their foundation clear and consistent. So, those that have the mindfulness and patience to ask those questions and really lock that in and that purpose-driven strategy, it makes everything else much more clear, more efficient. And you're inevitably saving yourself countless time, energy, hours. But you got to have the long view.
Yeah. Let's give folks a couple journal prompts that they can potentially use just to initiate some of that discovery work. Because I think I'm someone that journals every day, and that's one of my methods to realize, like, oh, this is not working, because I get to write out my thoughts. And so I'm curious if you might have, one or two prompts of that they could use in their journaling session, or even just thought process on their next walk, of something to answer.
So I'm a big fan of the term and kind of the framework of ikigai, the Japanese kind of concept, right? So it's kind of a reason for being. And I think that's really, really powerful and grounding. And you ask yourself, and these are some prompts that you need to kind of consider: what you love, okay, intersecting with what the world needs, okay, what you're good at, and what you can be paid for. And if you kind of intersect that, it's kind of like a Venn diagram of sorts. Then you start to integrate and identify with your passion, your mission, your vocation, your profession. So what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for. And if you can answer those questions, you'll start to kind of crystallize and see pretty definitively that path. But I would start there. It is a really sort of grounding and meditative experience. Um, and I feel like this is what gives like these I know there's a blue zone in Japan, right? People that live longer, happier, healthier lives, I do believe have really found and are harnessing that ikigai, that purpose and being that's greater than themselves.
Yeah, I love it. And that, I would tag on, what are you willing to do? So once you do the discovery work, right, and you journal on what Chase has shared, what are you willing to do, to shift, to try in the next 30 days that will inch you towards standing in that discovery work, that vision, that understanding now, that self-understanding that you have, to start having it show up in your life right now? Because I think we wait too long. We'll do a lot of discovery and then we'll figure out like, oh, I'll just go back to my old habits. And I'm someone that you're never certain of what's possible for you until you try. So we must step into action towards what it is. So to just tag on, once you do the discovery work, this is my add-on to it, is to answer the question, what are you willing to do in the next 30 days to stand in what you just discovered about yourself in order to inch towards it and realize that it's not so far away. It actually could be tomorrow's step that makes you feel more aligned with who you are, that makes you call in that ideal client, that makes you make that amazing relationship connect even deeper with the people in your life. Like there's so many ways to then take discovery and start acting in it that I think would be really fruitful for you.
And don't forget to give yourself grace in that process, right?
Yes, always
See,
grace.
we've brought it full circle.
That's right. We always do, Chase. We always do. And before we end today's conversation, I would love to ask, is there a challenge that you're facing right now or something that you could use some support on from me that we could dialogue on? And in any arena, it could be life, business, whatever's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is it's finding the new normal, like navigating this new reality for myself. In the cadence of life and work, as I'm stepping more into consulting and coaching with private clients, that is just an even deeper, more meaningful fulfillment of my purpose. And so we've talked about this before, sort of that 10x leap.
Yeah.
In order to achieve that, leaning in on that 20% that is truly in flow, which for me is that line of work, and identifying and sort of trimming the other 80% that might not be truly in alignment and still occupying a great deal amount of time and energy.
Yeah. So, my evolved mindset is a 90-10 split. It's like 10% of your time in owning something, 90% of your time needs to be like what fulfills you internally, and fuels you. But if we could start looking at your capacity, right? And I know this is very tactful, but I think for someone like you, it'd be worthwhile so that you realize like you're actually not that far from letting go of the role you had to play in the former business to up level yourself into just owning it, and being less operating in it. I know you've done a lot of that already. Like I know that transition, but if it's still eating at you in your mind from a responsibility standpoint.
Yes.
Right. Like there's something that happens when we build something ourselves where we have to start to practice detachment from what we once were in that business to what we are now owning that business. So there could be some inner detachment work and the best way I know that has helped a lot of clients detach and grow is to design who you are becoming and being super clear on that role and responsibility for yourself and realize that you've graduated this formal level, that it's much easier then to detach because you're no longer an undergrad, you're a grad, right? Like you have to kind of have that line in the sand to say, I'm not that role anymore. This is the role I play. So an exercise could be, map out your ideal role, life and business, whatever that looks like, just so you understand your destination really clearly. Yeah. Then you want to look at the capacity of time you're spending in that new role and against that old role that you played, right? So that old role then now has to either get delegated, stop doing, or it's not as needed anymore because you could do an assessment to be like, does this business actually require me to play that role anymore? I don't know. But if you can assess and then figure out your detachment methods, I think it'll be easier for you to then navigate the story in your mind of like why the attachment is still there. If responsibility is something that you're kind of trying to navigate, then what do you need to continue to be responsible of, and what performance measures need to be presented to you to feel like you're less in the business and more owning the business. And then you have key clients, right? The hardest part too, and when we're the founder and somewhat the brand of what we build, where there could be some key clients that will only stay if you're involved. It's to figure out the navigation of those discussions to ensure everyone feels whole on the fact that your role in that relationship is also changing. And either you replace yourself in it, or you're finding a method to be like that line of business is just, it ends with you. You know, like that's also something that occurs in some of these businesses as well. Does any of that resonate?
Absolutely. It all resonates. It's something, and I'll take it to task, is kind of designing that future identity of where I want to be, and then sort of really evaluating and measuring against that. I think it's a really great exercise, and something I will do, and I know you'll hold me accountable to.
Yes. And really think big, you know, like sometimes we limit ourselves, job descriptions of sorts. It's like it can feel very boxed in. But when you're at this level where you have proven so much and you have so much acumen, and then now you have this chartered course of where you're trying to go, visualization exercise of the whole picture of what it looks like to stand in that role through every area of your life, and then you reverse engineer from there, you know. So I'm excited to see it. And yes, please keep us informed because we want to see the progress as you step into that.
Thank you for that guidance. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So as folks want to connect with you, Chase, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
LinkedIn is probably the best. I won't answer you any other way. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not on like any other social platforms, or I try not to be. That's pretty much the only one. So LinkedIn, you can visit our website, like the agency website, vanquishmediagroup.com. But even if it's for a conversation or a bit more sort of inspiration to kind of find that why, I'd be happy to chat.
Yeah. And you also have your own show.
That's right. I forget, like I'm supposed to plug that now, right? Like
No.
Season 1, that's already in the can. So I also have a podcast. It's called In Pursuit of Purpose. And it is really real, raw, honest discussions of really the messy middle and the journey of being an entrepreneur. It is very much the antithesis of, hey, we've made it and here's how to scale and hustle culture. I think it's therapy selfishly for myself and kind of the guidance I wish I had earlier on in my journey.
And the realistic view, it's awesome. You know, like the journey is different for everyone. The pain, though, I think is a little bit the same.
If we have the courage to share, I think we'll realize that. Yeah,
big time. We've all been through it. We still go through it. I still go through it. So I'm so honored to have you today and have this discussion, and I can't wait to share it with everybody. And of course, love being all up in your business. But I think we got all up in other people's business today as we launch these conversations and make sure that they feel that they are stepping into their purpose and feeling aligned in who they are and all that they do. So thank you so much for joining me today, and I will see you in the next episode.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Just want to remind you that breakthroughs and strategies are here for you. You don't have to be isolated on your business building journey. If you'd like to have a chance to connect with me and let me be all up in your business, go to heykareen.com/connect, and a team member will share how you can obtain the best support at this time. You always can have me in your pocket by leveraging my AI. Go to heykareen.app, download it, and start chatting away. And of course, you know, I am always here, willing and ready to be the support you need. All you have to do is ask.